All right, let's jump right in. We're about to look at a really fascinating idea from our source material. A hidden link between two very different ancient stories. One's about a group of sleepers in a cave, basically frozen in time for centuries. The other, it's about merchants on a trade route, making a living. So what if, and this is the big question, what if they're both actually describing the exact same universal law?
I mean, just think about that for a second. It sounds a little bit like science fiction, right? The idea that the physics of the sun's path across the sky and the economics of a desert caravan could be playing by the very same rulebook. It's a huge claim, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
So here's the core thesis we're exploring. The source we're looking at says that these two specific passages aren't just telling two separate stories. No, they're actually illustrating a single fundamental law. One is playing out on a massive cosmic scale, and the other is playing out on a human, economic scale. Let's break down how that could possibly work.
We're going to start with the big one, the cosmic law. And this isn't just about a story. This is about the physics and the geometry that are supposedly hidden inside the narrative of the sleepers in the cave.
Okay, here's the verse itself. Now, you might read this and think, okay, it's just setting the scene, right? Poetic language. But our source says, hold on, this isn't just description. This is a super precise, almost scientific observation of orbital mechanics. So what does that really mean?
Well, it seems this verse is actually encoding something called solar azimuth drift. Basically, it's how the sun's rising and setting points move along the horizon during the year. Further north in the summer, further south in the winter. The argument is that this cave was perfectly positioned in what you could call a solar blind zone. The sun's path never hit it directly. This isn't some kind of miracle. It's just pure geometry. And this geometry created a protected window, a sort of shelter in time itself, which is what preserved the sleepers.
And that brings us to this really key concept, completion through stasis. The sleepers are preserved precisely because they're inactive. A great way to think about this is the solstice. The sun travels to its highest or lowest point, and for a moment, it seems to just stand still before it changes direction. At that peak, motion slows to almost zero. A state holds, and in this story, life is preserved. So remember that idea. Preservation happens through stillness at a crucial turning point.
Okay, so that's the cosmic scale. Now, how in the world does this connect to the human scale, to a trading society like the Quraysh? How could the same law possibly apply to them? This verse talks about the security of the Quraysh during their big trade journeys in winter and summer. And again, on the surface, it seems pretty simple, but the key, according to the source, is all in the timing. Why were these specific journeys secure? And this is where the connection gets really interesting. Their safety wasn't random. Those winter and summer journeys were perfectly timed to happen after the solstices, after the sun had hit its extreme northern or southern point and had already started its journey back. Their safe travel happened because the turn was already complete. You see the pattern? Just like the sleepers were preserved by waiting out the sun's cycle, the traders found success by acting only after the cycle's turning point had passed. Their provision followed the completion of a cosmic fate.
Okay, so now we've got two examples. One is about avoiding the sun by staying still, and the other is about syncing up with the sun after it stands still. So let's put them side by side and see if we can really spot that single structure hiding underneath.
This table just lays it all out so clearly. You've got a fixed location versus a moving society. You've got solar avoidance versus solar synchronization. Silence and sleep versus trade and motion. Preservation on one side, provision on the other. One group suspends time, the other exploits it. Now they seem like total opposites, but here's the kicker. Both of their outcomes, preservation and provision, depend entirely on understanding and respecting the precise timing of the sun's cycle.
This brings us back to that idea of silence or stillness. The source argues it's not about nothingness, it's about phase closure. The best way to picture this is if you throw a ball up in the air. At the very top of its arc, for a split second, its upward speed hits zero before it starts to fall. That pause, that tiny moment of stillness, that's the turning point. It's the completion of one phase that unlocks the next one. The deep sleep in the cave and the perfect timing of the trade journeys are both forms of this exact same powerful pause. And so after all that, we get to the single rule that seems to govern both the cave and the caravan. It's like a unified equation for success. No action is valid or safe until the turn is complete. You have to wait for that moment of phase closure before you make your next move. So what does that mean in practice? It's pretty simple, actually. Premature motion, trying to act before the turn is complete, is like fighting against the current. It leads to loss. But aligned motion,
acting after the turn, is like working with the current. It leads to safety and provision. This isn't just a philosophical idea. The source is arguing that this is celestial mechanics applied directly to life.
So let's pull all these threads together for our final takeaway. We've seen how two completely different stories can be unpacked to show one single deep principle at work.
So the bottom line is this. The story of the cave shows us how protection comes from staying still within a safe zone that's literally defined by orbital geometry. And the story of the Quraysh shows us how success and survival come by moving, but only after that very same geometry has completed its turn. It's the same system. It's just at a different scale. It's one law.
And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. If a law as fundamental as orbital mechanics can map onto success and failure in these ancient stories, what about our own lives? What other parts of our world, our societies, maybe even our personal decisions are operating on these hidden blueprints, just waiting for us to see the connection?